Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters Podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. In the summer of 2023, it was my absolute privilege to be invited out to the GORE headquarters to find out a little bit more about the company, the origin, the culture, and exactly how they keep first responders safe all over the world. Over the next 45 minutes or so, you will see me interacting with a whole different host of members of the team, finding out more about the technology, the culture, the ethics, the values, and exactly why GORE is such a brand leader in this sector. First, I'm speaking with Ollie Wilson. Ollie's the sales manager for UK and Scandinavia, and he's also GORE-TEX's professional footwear and fire garments lead. In our conversation, we look at the founders, learn a little bit more about them, and how they came across this magic material and started to explore its applications. Let's take a look.
Yeah, I mean, Bill and Viv, who started the company back in the middle of the 1900s, they had a dream. Like, they had a vision of creating this enterprise, and they started in their garage making products. And yeah, it literally started as that, and they kind of had this big idea to create this enterprise that we live by now. But actually, that started from the garage and kind of built and grew and grew.
But it was kind of an accidental technology as well. I know we were using the analogy of the adhesives and kind of post-it notes and how that happened by accident, but it was kind of around the PTFE tape and what I historically remember as like we'd use it in plumbing to stop leaks and stuff like that. And that moment of frustration where he was just ripping it to pieces in his garage and realised that, like so many things, it has multiple applications. And then he started to understand the fibres and the applications and the moisture resistance and that, and because there was that big, what's that thing, the big fibre exploded diagram that they've got in one of the big rooms here?
Yeah, so basically PTFE, and it was used to insulate cables. And that was kind of how the business started.
But that was a massive business in itself. I remember seeing on the wall, they've got some huge contracts back in the 80s or something, and then it went into NASA, and then it went into all of industry. But it's a bit of a leap to then decide to start going into emergency services, first responders, fire and rescue, protective gear. You know, it's a bit of a jump.
It was to try and, the need to try and make the product more commercial. And they tried various different ways of basically turning a fibre to make it bigger, heating it up, stretch it, do this. And actually it was this moment of boom, of ripping it, that actually it stayed in the same thickness, but became microporous. So that enabled it to then progress into what other applications could it be used for, and that's where the discovery came of actually, it's 100% waterproof because water can't pass through. But then actually, because of the structure, it becomes breathable. So sweat can pass through. Ta-da!
But even that becomes a big jump to then put it into clothing and PPE and the applications that we see now. When was the first time, and I know I'm putting you on the spot again, but I was looking through the timeline of when they had the first application in whether it was fire kit or police or military. That was that mid-90s or was it a little bit later than that?
Yeah, so the first application came after King's Cross disaster.
So for people that aren't familiar, King's Cross was 1987. So 31 people died as a result of it, members of the public. And this is back when we had, you know, just the overalls almost really, you know, it was all the plastic kit and the rubber cork helmets and all that sort of stuff. PPE was in a very different place back then.
Yeah, and it was kind of one of our associates that pioneered that kind of, helped to pioneer that change of adding a membrane into the suit to make it more durable, more protective, to help protect the firefighter. And then obviously that's kind of evolved into now we've got our cross-tech laminate, which obviously helps to protect against like bloodborne pathogens, infections, HIV, that kind of thing.
Something that surprised me as well though, because when we look at GORE-TEX, people don't know that it's actually not the product itself, like it's not the fire kit. That's actually the manufacturer. But it seems really strange when I first started learning about it, because I'm looking around, I'm looking at all the testing, we've got fire kit around us, there's police, military, all that sort of stuff. It's one of those things where it's like, it's nothing to do with you, but it's also got your stuff in it. So that's a really strange and unique decision, because most people, like, if I sold you this piece of paper, you decide to put it in a book, it's up to you what you want the book to look like, but actually it's got my paper in it, so it's still kind of my thing. But that's a really strange and unique decision when we talk about that traceability and the life cycle of the product and being able to guarantee, that RON seal, it does what it says on the tin. That's actually quite unique, I think, in terms of the testing facility and all the different things that you demand of your suppliers.
So we have a strategy at Gore and a belief, and the belief is in the value of the partnership.
Okay.
So you're right, we essentially sell rolls of membrane to our partners.
Yep.
And we could say, off you go, put it in, we don't care.
But why not just do that? Why not just let them do whatever they want with it? It's my business, I'll make some fire kit however I want to make the fire kit, you just sell me the thing.
It's because of this.
Okay.
It's a brand.
So what?
And that's one of our most powerful assets. And we believe in making product that does what it says it does.
Okay.
Fitness for use. So it's something you hear a lot about in Gore, is fitness for use, products that do protect those that need protected the most. And we do this through a variety of different tests, all the processes throughout the production of footwear or garments. And we believe that if you test, that ensures that the product you're wearing, when you need it in emergency situations, gives you the best level of protection you can get. And when we start a relationship with a partner, like we sit down, we talk about the testing requirements, what's needed, what they need to do to have a GORE-TEX license.
That's a bit of a big commitment from them, though, to be fair.
But it's a two-way thing. So the partnership is we invest our time, money, setting up the factories.
Yeah.
As you saw, we're setting up the seam sealing machines, setting up the centrifuge testing.
I didn't realise how important the seam sealing side of it was, to be honest.
Massive. Yeah.
Because that's the point of failure, I suppose, on most of the garments, or potential point of failure.
Yeah, and that's the real sort of DNA with us.
Yeah.
I mean, GORE-TEX membrane with the EPTFE tape, which it's been specifically designed for that product with the right adhesive to be applied at the right temperature, and that will be applied throughout so all of our manufacturing locations globally. And our partners have to use that machine, have to use that temperature, have to do that setting. And that's what gives us that durable waterproofness.
Yeah, but if you don't actually understand the difference between them, this can get into buzzword bingo. Because I've also, with the greatest respect, heard a lot of other manufacturers claim to use the same processes, but it wasn't until, like, speaking to a few associates here, speaking to a few other providers, and you actually see some of the testing where some of their kit is only like 3 or 4 washes, 3 or 4 cycles, 3 or 4 months old, and they have said they use the same seal processes, but it doesn't seem to last. So what's the difference?
Well, the difference is the relationship we have with our partners to ensure that quality up front. So we work a lot earlier in the process. So we don't just get a product, test it and say, no, that's no good. We kind of go in and sell our new materials, work with the development team, R&D, get to prototype stage, look at what's gone wrong or how we can improve early before. Then it goes through testing. And this is kind of the real unique part that I believe we have at Gore, and it's the testing and the way we test, the standards, and then there's GORE-TEX standards. Okay. So, like one of the ones we saw yesterday, for example, is the flexor test.
Yes.
You know, where the boot is flexing underwater.
Yeah.
I mean,
like 5,000...
500,000.
500,000.
500,000 flexes. Yeah. And because of the process with the seam sealing, because of our adhesion with the tape, because of the glue, because of all these checkpoints throughout that process, we're able to deliver a product that can do 500,000 flexes to the fire service. Now, I challenge any other brand to come in and do that.
That's the thing, isn't it, though? But we've said before, earlier on in this week, that a lot of, a lot of governments in general, a lot of businesses are kind of in this unconscious time frame where it's like making a profit per quarter, or we can't overspend in the year, but then we sometimes struggle to zoom out and look at cost in a holistic sense of the environment. I mean, we're speaking to one of your colleagues the other day about that sustainability aspect as well, and like the cost cycle of an entire product, both to the environmental, but also to the end user, because they always say buy well, buy once. And when you have to replace the boots every 2 or 3 years, but you don't think about that on the initial purchase, and you also are basing it on promises of people that say it's going to last. I mean, I know these are my words, not yours, but I'm pretty confident there's like claims or court cases going against other providers at the minute who have said they can do a certain thing, and then they're a couple of months in and the thing is failing already. But how are people supposed to know that if they're not holding to the same? Are they actually held to the same standards? Because they must not be, otherwise they wouldn't be failing.
So the EN standards that everyone has to pass for it to be sold. So,
but surely that must be too low then. Because if people say they're hitting these standards and it's not lasting as long as these are, surely there's a little bit of tomfoolery going on somewhere there.
Yeah, I mean, from our point of view, we try and flip it into what we believe we do as a brand. So, like, hence why we wanted to bring you out here, Pete, is because we can talk about all this stuff and I can show you fancy videos, but you've got to see, feel, smell it in the factory and everything. And it's really
when you're asking someone and they go, yeah, so we do this and it does this for 5 days.
Yeah.
What, it's going to do that for 5 days?
Yeah, and you start to see it and get a real feel for it.
It's not just patch it together, bang it in a box, send it out the door.
No, so from our point of view, we want to highlight the GORE-TEX standard.
Yeah.
And yes, we want to protect you to the highest level possible. And we do that through working with the best footwear partners globally, through working with their team throughout the process. We've got our own team of engineers that help support at factory level, design level, and then obviously from the market side, which is more myself.
So what we're looking at.
Right then, Pete, so one of the questions I get asked all the time is, how is GORE-TEX 100% waterproof, yet breathable at the same time? Okay?
How does the air get out and the water not get in?
Which is quite simple logic, right? Okay. So this is a replication of our ePTFE membrane. Okay. So you imagine under microscopic conditions, this is what it will look like. And you can see it's a porous structure, and there's holes and there's gaps. So when we sweat, the vapor can pass through. So if you imagine a sweat is the size of, say, a golf ball, and a golf ball would pass through that. So sweat can evaporate through. But then water droplets coming through the membrane, so water obviously trying to get in. Imagine that's like the size of a football trying to get through this. You would never get it through. Okay, so the ePTFE membrane with our GORE-TEX stretch structure, which becomes porous, means that no water can get in, but vapor can get out. That's the magic. It can breathe and be waterproof at the same time.
Next up, I'm speaking with Cindy Lund. Cindy is the Global Strategic Marketing Lead for Fabrics. In this conversation, we talk about the applications and how they started to expand it out their use in GORE-TEX. And also we talk about the sustainability aspect, which is at the core of Gore.
Very nice to meet you, Pete. So I'm Cindy Lund. I do global strategic marketing for the public safety business. So that includes fire, police, riot police, and technical rescue.
Now, GORE-TEX is a household name. GORE-TEX, Gore, different variations. For anybody that has no idea what it is, what is Gore?
So a lot of people, so when I tell people what I do, I say, I work for the company that makes GORE-TEX because that's what they know. But you're right, Gore, that's just one of the areas. GORE-TEX is just one of the key areas of Gore. We have a lot of different products that people know nothing about. Everything from, insulating cables, and we were on the Mars shuttle. I mean, that's something unique.
Yeah, see it from the astronauts. There was stuff when they went to the top of Everest, or they went to Antarctica, or something
right,
like that.
That was the fabrics part of it. That's right. They wore the GORE-TEX fabrics at Antarctica. That's right. And but the fact that we're also in mobile phones, insulating there. We have a big medical division. People don't know about that. Actually, we're in everything from, things to seal the holes in hearts. Sometimes kids are born, or babies are born with holes in their hearts, and we actually have like a system that kind of seals the hole on each side, so you don't have to
that makes sense, actually, when I think about the membrane, the application of the fabric. It would make sense, actually, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, and the good thing is about it is you avoid a surgery, because you can, so rather than having to open up the heart, they put a thing around it. So so that's a big area of ours, and also everything from satellite cameras and kinds of different things.
So what do you focus on your side of the business?
So I focus on the technical side. So whenever I tell people what I do as well, I say, GORE-TEX?
Yeah.
Well, and everybody knows that they're for hiking and skiing.
Yes. Yeah, we see the lovely jackets going up and down beautiful mountains and all that sort of stuff.
Exactly.
But most people won't know that it's in a lot of first responder gear as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that I say, well, you probably know that it's waterproof, but we also offer a lot more technologies on part of it. And then, the fact that we focus on firefighters who need protection for heat and virus protection against bloodborne pathogens.
So that was a really interesting aspect for me. When we talk about the pathogen side of stuff and the exposure that first responders get to it, I mean, I do something called International Search and Rescue. We get so many vaccinations every year because we travel all over the country and we travel all over the world, and we know that we expose ourselves to these pathogens. And I was looking at some data the other day, and it was like HIV, at the end of 2021, 38 million people had it, hepatitis B, 2 billion people, and 1.5 million are infected every year. How does GORE-TEX technology protect us from the pathogen side of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really important part. So a lot of people think about the fire protection, but another big part is is the protection from bloodborne pathogens. So the pores in the material are so small that the viruses can't get through. Okay. So we protect them from that for, as you mentioned, HIV, hepatitis, and that's the protection that our cross-tech technology.
But that's not a standard expectation of all of the tenders and stuff, is it though? Because I don't know, and you'll know far better than me, only certain brands or manufacturers are actually doing that. We're not at the point where everyone has to do it. Is that right?
So, yeah, I mean, so for instance, in the US, the NFPA in 1971, it's in the standard that you have to have viral protection. Okay. Because it is very important. You don't know who that you're going to come across and, in a different situation. And we all know firefighters are doing a lot more than just fighting fire.
Yeah, 100%.
Yep, they're actually on those call outs. So the cross-tech technology, the viral protection is actually really important.
We get a lot of companies talking about sustainability. It's kind of a bit of a buzzword bingo. I feel like people are sometimes virtue signaling. They know that they should say it, and it's kind of something that they have to put in all of their paperwork. What does sustainability mean to you? What does sustainability mean to Gore? And how do you put that into practice? When it's actually boots on the ground, proving it with your actions, what does it mean to you guys?
Well, sustainability is one of our 4 key pillars, business pillars that we prioritize, and it's not a new thing for us, so it's something we've been doing for over 30 years. We've got a lot of, working with GORE-TEX very many number of years ago and reducing some of the chemicals in our products many years ago as well. So we have a history of doing it. It's not just something new. But I think what people, we have things like reducing chemical impacts and our carbon footprint.
In what capacity though? Because when people say reduce the carbon footprint, that means a different thing to a lot of people. How far do you zoom out and think about the full environmental impact of, for example, creating this boot?
Well, we've set pretty ambitious carbon goals. Okay. So by 2050, it's not that far away, we're going to reduce our carbon goals by half. Okay. And we look at it in terms of the product, but also our plans. And for instance, what kind of electricity do we use in the buildings where people work? So it's a very comprehensive way to look at the carbon goals, not just the products, which obviously that's important, but the whole how we work and what kind of what are we using in terms of our carbon footprint?
What are the costs that go into producing a boot like that? And I don't mean as in the materials, but when we talk about the fact that, I've had Hikes boots that have lasted me 12 years versus something you might have to buy every couple of years.
Well, that's a really good point. So most people focus on other things, maybe on recyclability, when in fact durability we know is the most important environmental factor, because all the resources you take to produce it or to distribute it, the extraction of the resources, they're used when you make it. Yeah.
You can't just ignore those aspects because they are part of the supply chain, effectively.
Right. And the longer you use those resources, the lower the footprint is over time. Yeah. And the other thing is obviously the longer you use something, the less garments or the less replacements you're going to need, which is then less waste for the planet.
But aside from the planet aspects as well, because we'd like to think that's a priority for everybody, even for the individuals and the services actually purchasing these products, they've not got to think about buying it again every 2 or 3 years.
And that's another one. So that's the economic part, right?
Because even if people aren't driven by the societal values that they would like to leave the world better than they found it, there's also that economical factor, because that is a very emotive subject. We can live in a world where we'd like everything to be perfect, but realistically we have still got to stay within our financial goals.
Right. So, I mean, it's really nice when people have the broader long-term view, and they look at all the costs spent over more years. So if you know, that's why we do what we call a life cycle assessment.
Yeah.
So that really looks at the cost of the product over its whole use, and comes back to what you said earlier. What did you say? Buy once?
Buy well, buy once. Yeah. But some people think that's quite like an elitist opinion, because it's a privileged thing if you're able to spend that money now. But I think that's where leaders face those really difficult decisions, because they've got to make the right decision for the next 10 years versus just trying to limp along and say, this will do for now. I know it's not ideal. I know it's not perfect. But then they know they're going to have to, it's like putting plaster, it's like putting a plaster on a gunshot wound, isn't it? You know you're going to have to do something else about it very soon.
Right.
Because you've not got the perfect solution. You're going to have to go back and revisit this. You're going to have to put another implication. You're going to have to buy something again next year.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why we try to communicate about the fact of, think about the long life of the product, and that in the end of the day, it's actually going to cost you less, because it's the cost of buying replacement products, and also all the work that goes into making a tender. I mean, there's a lot of people's time that also gets factored in, and the money of doing that. So that's why we believe, and we focus on the durability of our products first. And then you saw some of the things yesterday in the factory,
100%.
why our products are more durable, right? With the robust materials and the testing and the seam sealing. We offer repair kits as well. And we try to make it comfortable, because if it's not comfortable, you're not going to use it, and you're going to throw it away. So I think that's important to get that message out. I mean, I just think it's important to raise the awareness of how important it is to have something that lasts longer. I know there's a lot of things going on in the EU and other levels where they're really trying to, because another thing is, how do you measure something, the durability of something? So, we try to provide at least our thoughts around, all the you saw all the testing that we did today.
Yeah, but you guys and girls have been around long enough that you can actually prove that now. Companies coming in that are only 5 or 10 years old will argue against that, because they haven't got the track record when you come in and say, no, we've been doing this for X number of decades.
So we try to at least tell them what we do. How do we measure? Like the Martindale test is an example.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just an example where we say, well, this is how we set standards on how we measure our own durability of our products, and maybe this could be something for you to think about. So absolutely. And then maybe we also do have a couple other partnerships. So we use the Blue Sign, which is part of the Sustainable Fashion Coalition, and they measure. They have a tool that measures chemical impacts, and it's becoming more and more used in the industry. This Blue Sign MSI tool.
Is that as in like the sort of chemicals that are involved in producing the item itself? Are we talking there?
Blue Sign also does that. So they have like the system partner system, where you can, it kind of looks at the whole supply chain and what chemicals are used, and make sure there's nothing
the environmental
unsafe.
cost of producing that. When I think of things like lithium-ion batteries and stuff like that, people say, oh, they last a very long time. Yeah, but the environmental cost of producing that item is colossal.
Right.
And also, there's not really a recyclable long-term journey for that item after it's come to its life expectancy.
Exactly. So we try to work with a few of these leading bodies like the Sustainable Fashion Coalition and other things that try to, how do you measure water, fuel, water consumption and soil and things like that. And then, we try to fulfill some of the...
Why is that not valued more, though? Why is it more of a virtue signaling in terms of like government organizations and people that set the guidance and the legislation around personal protective equipment? Why is it so difficult for them to recognize the value of companies that are doing environmentally friendly practices versus just that siloed single cost to the consumer as such? Is that not something that we should be recognizing more?
I mean, I think that governments are trying more and more to hear from, get different viewpoints when they're thinking about how do we make sustainability criteria that are relevant. We always provide our opinion on the durability aspect, of course, but I think they're also looking at.
But I think it should be a
aspects.
cut-off in like tenders where they say that if you can't prove that your product is going to last X years, 10 years, 8 years, whatever, then it would really, it's a little bit like the expectation, the standard. We spoke about that water line before. If the water's rising, the people that are just meeting the minimum will not be able to exist. And it's not about beating the competition or anything like that. It's asking and encouraging everybody to bring themselves to that level. It's not saying we're better than you, so no one else deserves to be in this arena. It's saying, no, you can all do this, but just raise your standard a little bit more and have those sort of morals that align with a sustainable effect on the environment through the production of the product.
Right, and I know there's some, a lot of research out there, like, in Norway, they're doing some things. There's an interesting study that's going on in Sweden right now, and they're really trying to measure across different kinds of like jackets in the professional space where we are, and also in the consumer space, how durable they are, so they can also help to figure out how do we measure and talk about durability, which is not exactly what you said, but I think we need just we need to agree at a metric, and I agree we need to take the longer view. I mean, definitely agree. Get governments and things to start taking the longer view on creating less waste.
It's a responsible thing to do.
Yes.
Love it.
Love it. Thank you. Pyralon is really our latest innovation. I think it came out about 8 years ago, more or less.
Okay.
And
What's different about
it? The difference is that it provides superior thermal protection even when wet. Heat is conducted 23 times faster when something's wet. That's why when you pick up a hot pot, right? You pick up a hot pot and you burn your hand if the little pot thing is wet.
People always ask, why do we use water as a main extinguisher media? I always say it's a heat thief. It has got a tremendous conductivity and heat capacity to it. So that's why, and it's so easy for it to absorb heat.
Exactly.
So we use it, but the problem is, like you just said, when you then apply water to a fabric or something like that,
it gets wet.
That's why when you wear wet clothes, we lose all of that thermal heat from ourselves.
Right.
That's exactly
so the beauty of this product, I like to say it basic, kind of it's like a sandwich.
Okay.
So there you have a membrane, like one of our membranes on one side, and you've got the thermal layer, and you've got basically you've got a membrane on both sides of the thermal layer.
Okay.
So the moisture, the thermal barrier, so it's sandwiched, so it stays dry.
Yes.
So it keeps the thermal barrier
because historically
protected.
it just used to have the water membrane in the inside, then you'd have the thermal layer, but doesn't stop the material getting wet from the outside.
It stops the material from getting wet from the outside, but it doesn't stop it from you getting wet from your sweat.
Yeah, 100%.
Right.
Love it.
So it's like a sandwich, so it keeps it from getting wet from the outside, keeps it dry from your sweat from the inside, so it can do its job. That's why it's the best thermal protection, even when wet.
So we've been looking at loads of instant debriefs over the past sort of decade, and one of the things that we see firefighters struggling with is heat stress, because the compartment loading inside some of these buildings is getting hotter and hotter, and we want fire kit that's able to reflect that and able for us to A, lose that heat easier, but B, hopefully we don't heat up so much in the process.
Yeah, no, that's right. So again, at some of the recent PPE meetings as well, I've been hearing the same thing. Heat stress is one of the biggest challenges that we have in the UK fire service today. So normally there's this trade-off between sort of high thermal protection, and then you've got so high thermal protection but lower breathability, or you've got the opposite way of kind of having higher breathability but lower thermal protection.
Yeah.
Not no more. Okay, so this is where we've got GORE-TEX Cross-Tech Paralon, which can kind of give you the benefits, the best of both worlds. So high thermal protection as well as really high breathability. So one of the huge benefits of GORE-TEX Cross-Tech Paralon is because it's not picking up as much moisture, you're able to push the sweat through the garment quicker, which means you cool down quicker.
So when we say not picking up any more moisture, this is the whole sandwich analogy, isn't it? So it's got the moisture-resistant membrane on both sides, whereas historically it used to be thermal protection, then the moisture barrier. Now we've got kind of 3 layers with the air pockets in between. So it's not allowing that thermal radiation still, but it's stopping all the absorption of the moisture externally, i.e. from the branch pattern or whatever, or being in the incident itself. The kit's not picking up all of that moisture and isn't effectively absorbing all of that heat.
Correct. And of course, with the membrane being dry, it means that actually all the sweat that's being produced, which obviously can get to be heated up really quickly, helps to push it out through the garment, keeping you cooler.
And then when you're out, you cool down quicker as well.
Correct.
Next up, I got a chance to sit down with Christoph. Now, Christoph is one of the true product specialists when it comes to structural fire garments. He's got a real wealth of experience from working with firefighters for many, many years, and this really helps GORE when it comes to designing fabric and designing garments, specifically for the end user.
The Paralon kit is based on many years of experience in the structural fire garments. We developed the first one to protect the firefighters from moisture and moisture transfer, and over time what we discovered is as more outside the moisture barrier is, the less ingress of liquid heat you have, but your comfort is decreasing. The more you bring it inside, the comfort increase, but the protection, the net protection with liquid is lower. And in fact, Parallon is a mixture of these two extreme solutions. We have two films, one outside which protects you from the outside ingress into the thermal insulation, one inside that protects your body and increase the breathability. But you need both together to have the performance. We started from very low protection and we increased protection, more and more thermal protection. But over time, when you have too much protection, you have a moisture management, if we can call it with this, that is trapped into the gear. And this moisture can create some downsides. And this is exactly when you need to balance the comfort and the thermal protection. Too much thermal protection is great for fire, but have downside. What do you do with your kit? And how do you adapt your insulation to the task you are doing? This is mandatory to improve your safety.
When did you realize that we needed to do better for firefighting PPE?
Let's say we went through several big tenders in UK, testing one pyroman after the other, and over the year, no burn injury into the pyroman. And we were called for one case where two firemen were trapped into so everything went wrong, but they had two different kits. Both had GORE moisture barriers, but not the same generation type of product. And one had theoretically much more insulation than the other one. And the one which has the lightest gear had less burn injury than the one with the highest burn. But it was not linked to the fire. It was linked to what they have done with a fire kit or doing this extreme case. And we realized that also what you hear here in the industry and literature, you might be burned by your kit and not by the fire. And this opened us a lot of discussion and thinking about what is driving this. So at the moment, we are working on a new generation of technical gear, closing the gap between, I would say, the station uniform you wear for all the day and your fire intervention kit. There is 90% of your time where the fire kit is not needed or used for its thermal insulation, but you have a lot of tasks where you are multiplying the risk together. And this is where we are working on in order to make the lightest weight, more protective, comfortable garment. GORE-TEX Pirate Rescue Stretch is one of this version. We have combined the needs of the firefighters being protected from virus, liquids, and chemicals, but include all our newest technology to make a lightweight, a little bit like a consumer garment, but with fire protection, fit for you to use in most of the case and being protected in case of an incidental fire. Last but not least, what is really important with this new generation of garment, you wear them more often, so you need to clean it more often. And as you may have much more risk to contamination, you need to decontaminate it in the proper way. And this is why this product was developed specifically to withstand hard, very intense industrial environment.
So I've absolutely loved this last 2 days, getting to meet the team, seeing the products, going in the factory, actually seeing the stuff do what it says on the tin, actually seeing the importance of the product, and also being welcomed by all the team. But it does leave me with the question of why now? You know, why are GORE-TEX making such a big push? Why are you engaging with more first responders? I know you've always done it, but now you really lean into it.
We were always with end user firefighters in this case because this is the best way for us to learn together. We need to understand your job. We need to understand where your problems are. We were always with you, interviewing you, discussing with you, going when we had access to injuries or accident to understand what was wrong. Yeah. Was it the PPE? What is the procedure? Because we cannot do any product if we don't understand you. So in GORE, we were always making trial with you, understand you, interview you. But now there is also a generation change.
Yeah, 100%.
We are much more, let's say, senior officer we knew as common firefighters at the beginning are now retiring slowly. And we find out that communication have changed as a generation have changed. So it's not different than before. We explain it just with a different way.
Yeah, I love that. What about yourself?
I mean, building on one thing that Christoph said, it is important to reach out to the younger generation and educate them as well, because, I mean, we feel that our job is to protect those who protect us when it matters most. And we make the products that we feel offer the very best protection, and we want them to know about it, because how can it protect them if they don't know about it?
I totally agree.
Yeah, and then maybe the other aspect is we sponsor a lot of events like British Firefighter Challenge, because we feel it's important to give back. I mean, those are, we want to support them in doing these things so that they can have these competitions, so they can get out there and compete. And
that's the big shift that I've seen from people like GORE-TEX. Because to be honest with you, we see a lot of companies organising these lovely, nice events where chief fire officers and get to go and have a nice meal. But the end user, like you said, the person that's actually out there, boots on the ground, it's people like GORE-TEX who are actually investing time in them, who are listening to them, who are spending time with them. That's what I think is a real crucial difference, and I love to see more organisations moving in that direction.
Great.
What about yourself, Ollie?
Well, obviously from a sales function, I'm responsible for footwear and garments across the UK, so it's really important for me to connect with the fire service at all levels, but I just love the passion and energy of the Firefighters podcast, and we're really excited to continue the growth with that. And for me, the way people engage in the fire service is changing. So this is a really great way of being able to connect with the fire service directly through your channel. And look, we've had a fantastic time welcoming you over to Gore here in Germany. We could have just done this via the UK or 100%. Via Teams call or whatever, but we wanted you to kind of feel the culture, the passion, the energy, and see how we make our GORE-TEX products. So,
but it comes back to exactly what you've been speaking about, is that fairness aspect. I've felt like I've been brought out here, including everybody. You've made that commitment to me, I've made that commitment to you. And also you've been given the freedom to do this, because it is a risk, it is a new thing, hasn't been done before. You've got companies engaging with new media, new platforms, and somebody's got to go first, right?
That's right. But no, thanks again, Pete. We've loved having you, and we look forward to welcoming you here again soon, hopefully.
Let's have an adventure. Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot.
I just wanted to jump back in with a final thanks from me. It was a real privilege to spend time with the GORE-TEX team, to see behind the curtain, to look inside the factories, and to meet so many incredible people that really fills me with reassurance that the first responders that are out there on the front line are really being supported. There's so much dedication, research that goes into these products. It was really overwhelming to see that, and just to be welcomed by the team. I want you to continue to support your first responders all over the world. Those men and women that are choosing to be out there on the front line, challenging themselves and putting themselves in truly hazardous environments. And I also want to give a big thanks to GORE-TEX for investing their time into the podcast. It's a real privilege to be sharing the stories of first responders all over the world. Without the support of people like GORE-TEX and our other partners, it simply wouldn't be possible.
Firefighters podcast is put together to develop, inspire, and hopefully even motivate those individuals who have chosen to serve our communities and be part of the first responder family. It's brought to you by myself, operational firefighter Pete Wakefield. If you have enjoyed today's episode and you want to see the podcast continuing, please head over to our Patreon page where you can support the ongoing efforts of the podcast. Please hit that follow, subscribe, or rate button on whatever platform you're listening to. Please support your emergency services responders, and thank you for listening.